Hello everyone. This is a short vocabulary lesson on an important topic in coding, coding structures. When you're writing code, there's certain structures that help you avoid repeating yourself and also control the flow of your commands in your, or your path through your commands in your code. They're vital to creating computer programs. First of all, when you're writing computer programs, depending on which language you are writing, syntax is something that's very important. And syntax are those rules that talk about what's the correct sequence of symbols, letters, or punctuation, capital letters, lowercase letters, that can be used to form a correctly structured program in a given programming language. So just like English has grammar, programming languages have syntax, so certain things must be capitalized. Punctuation needs to be in exactly the right place. Spaces and sometimes indentation are also important. And all of these things will determine whether your program correctly runs or if it gets an error. So be aware of what programming language you're using and what capitalization, punctuation, spaces, indentation, or other rules there are in the language. For example, in a programming language, this command is not the same as this command. One might be correct, and one might not be correct. You're going to do an activity where some particular commands will require a lowercase first word with a capital letter in the middle, open parentheses, close parentheses, and a semicolon at the end. So it's important to make sure you're following the conventions of the syntax for the particular programming language you're working with. Another programming structure is called a loop. And this programming structure repeats a sequence of instructions until a specific condition is met. So it will do a certain group of code, and then if something is true or not true, it will either stop executing or it will move on to a different section of code. Some common looping structures in languages are for loops or while loops. You're going to do a coding puzzle activity called Blockly Maze, and they have a loop structure called repeat until. So it will repeat a sequence of code until certain conditions are met. And you'll learn how to do that by playing with the Blockly Maze activity that I will show you shortly. Another coding structure is called a conditional. And this feature of a programming language performs different computations or actions depending on whether something is true or false. So if one thing is true, a certain set of code will run. If it's false, a different set of code will run. And so conditionals will let you determine kind of the path through your code that you'll follow. Some common conditionals in programming languages are IfThen. So if this is true, then do that. Or if then else. If this is true, then do that, else do something else. In the Blockly Maze activity, the puzzles you'll solve will use a conditional that says if path, so if there's a path in some direction, like if there's a path ahead or if there's a path to the left, do this particular set of code. So you'll get to fill out what code will happen if there's a path available in a certain direction. So in order to experience syntax, loops, and conditionals, you're going to do two sets of puzzles. One website is called Programming with Carol the Dog, and it will walk you through, you'll hit the start button, and it will walk you through some video tutorials about how to use a simplified set of JavaScript commands to program Carol the dog and how Carol moves around his world and picks up balls. It seems like a very simple activity, but it requires some programming understanding in order to be able to get the dog to do what it's supposed to do correctly. So you'll need to worry about syntax, and you'll need to think about the sequence of your commands and what Carol has to do. The other activity are Blockly Games, the maze activity. And in this case, you'll have a person that has to get through a maze, and you'll have some commands. And in this case, the commands are simplified, so you don't have to type the syntax, but you'll actually drag blocks and link them together, and then run your program to get your person to go to the end. And you see these blocks are equivalent to some JavaScript functions that it will show you at the end. So you'll progress through the different activities. There are 10 levels in Blockly Maze, and in the Programming with Carol the dog, there's several puzzles to fill out, and the final puzzle I want you to do is called the Pyramids of Carol. And when you get to the Pyramids of Carol section, that's where you'll finish. And I'm going to have you screenshot your Pyramids of Carol solution and your Blockly Maze, whatever the highest level that you make it to. If you make it all the way to 10, that's great. I want you to screenshot your code and save it as a file and attach it to the assignment that I will put in Google Classroom. So have fun playing with coding structures in these two puzzle websites.